Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next presentation in the latest TruRating webinar series, this month focusing on conversion, loyalty, and repeat visits. My name is Sean Connery, coming to you from Vancouver, Canada, and I'll be your presentation host today, not the main speaker. I'm excited to introduce him, Gareth Johns, in a moment. Slide advance, please. Our agenda is straightforward. We'll start with a quick introduction about TruRating and our speaker, and then get right into the content. As usual, we have a lot of value packed into about 20 minutes of presentation, and then about 5 to 10 minutes available for questions. Advanced slide, please. Thank you. So a brief word about TruRating for you to understand where the insights from today are coming from. We take a very unique approach to customer feedback and customer experience. We have a patented integration with the major point of sale and payment solution companies around the world. And we ask one question to consumers at the point of sale. Now that may rotate, so you can gain insights on all sorts of aspects of your business, but we never interrupt the purchase or the customer journey. So that allows us to deliver 80% response rates in store and 50% online, which is pretty incredible. If you think about that, a lot of our customers are seeing millions of pieces of feedback per year. So it's this technology that enables us to capture feedback from an incredible volume of customers who would usually never fill out a survey and deliver the insights that we'll be sharing with you today. After we collect that feedback, we wrap it with 50 data points about the transaction, and that allows us to do the data impact modeling and provide real-time insights delivered to your teams. Now, the interesting thing about TruRating is we take those ratings and we publish them online. And so that provides an element of social proof for stores that might otherwise be generating at most a couple of dozen reviews. And the last thing to know about TruRating is that every time we present a question to a customer, we donate to a children's charity. One more slide, please. And now to introduce our speaker for today, Gareth Johns. Gareth started his career at dunnhumby in the UK, working with Tesco on the launch of the Club Card loyalty scheme before moving to the US as part of the original team to launch dunnhumby USA, which is now 8451, part of Kroger. With 25 years of experience using data to help businesses deliver customer-centric initiatives, Gareth's wide range of expertise includes program design, data analytics, product development, program management, and client consulting. And as our Chief Data Officer at TruRating, Gareth now advises customers on how to best align consumer data collection and analysis with business objectives. So that's the profile and the words on the screen. But what I'd like to say is Gareth truly has a depth of insight about this industry that's rare to come across. So though I'm sure you're going to find the content fascinating and insightful, I really encourage you to take advantage of the Q&A session today. This is a great chance to hear from a real expert on the topic of customer insights in retail. So there we are. Gareth, over to you.
Thank you. Right, so today we're going to be talking mainly about loyalty and repeat visits, I think. So for anybody that joined the webinar from last month, our focus there was very much around how to gain greater sales by increasing the amount that customers spend in the moment. So there we were looking very much at how do you encourage customers to trade up to a more premium product, or how do you encourage customers to put an extra item into their basket. So today really what we want to talk about is with some of the retailers that we've been working with, how can you increase revenue through getting that additional visit? By getting customers to return to the store more often, and by getting them to do more of their shop with you, increase their share of wallet. And I thought today we'd look at, I guess, 3 factors or 3 examples from the work that we've been doing, and that they sort of form into, I guess, 3 main areas around customer experience, so how the customer experiences that initial visit to the store, giving them a reason to return, and finally, sort of what is the role of the loyalty program in driving loyalty. Just a bit, I guess, about the way that we do it. And how we ask questions and how we track return visits so that some of this stuff that we go on to talk about makes sense. We ask a question on the payment pad. We can ask multiple questions. And generally, we have a set of core questions that look at different aspects of customer service. So that might be the customer service itself, the overall experience the customer had, their perceptions of the product range, their perceptions of value for money, and finally, their likelihood to recommend for those retailers that really like to understand a kind of an NPS type scoring of things. And those questions on the pin pad, customers can answer on a scale of 0 to 9. The 0 to 9 is just because on a pin pad or a keypad, those are the buttons that they can press. So with a single button press, they can answer the question, 0 being worst to 9 being best. The other thing worth noting is that the payment partners that we work with give us a one-way encrypted hash of the payment card. And what that means is that while we have absolutely no idea who that customer is and no ability to contact them, we can at least see whether that same payment card comes back again, either to that store or to another store. And that's really how we start to get at understanding return visits and repeat visits and loyalty. So this first example is for a department store. And for this department store, we'd looked previously at when customers have a certain experience, what does that do to their sort of spend per visit or average transaction value? And what we noticed there was that actually, when customers are rated between 0 and about 5 or 6, actually, above that point, it was very hard to encourage them to spend more money. So while you couldn't really encourage a customer to spend more on a particular visit, if you gave them a bad experience, you could definitely encourage them to spend less. But actually, beyond that point, it got very difficult to increase spend by offering better service. So that there was almost a cap on how much you were going to get from any one customer in any one visit. And so for this retailer, what they were trying to do in increasing revenue for the year was really look at, well, how do I get that customer to come back? How do I start looking at what I can get from that customer over the course of a whole year? How much of their kind of spend I can capture? And what we noticed here was that actually, to get any more likelihood of return, it really only kicked in at that final point, at that kind of 9 out of 9, or that top box score, that excellent experience that a consumer has. And actually, for the number of customers that were kind of rating between 0 and 8, it really didn't make that much difference in terms of how likely they were to come back until you got to that final point. And so this was a way of encouraging their staff to realize that while they might not see the impact on any one visit of excellent service, over the course of the year and over the course of getting customers to return, it could have a really big impact. And for this retailer in particular, given the number of customers they had that weren't having that kind of 9 out of 9 experience, if they could get them there, it would result in an extra 3% in annual transactions per year. And for most of those customers, the additional visits that they made in that year were worth just as much as that first visit. So it wasn't a case of, which can be a problem, when customers start coming to you more often, is the spend is just being split across more visits. This was proper sort of incremental revenue coming from those additional visits. So 3% in annual transactions was near enough 3% in annual spend as well. And so it was just a way of looking at, I guess, the importance of that kind of consistently excellent service in driving those additional visits, but also sharing that knowledge with members of staff in store so that they understood why it was so important to get to that point, and why anything less than that, while it might not have an impact on that exact visit, could have an impact later on. That's sort of the first example of, I guess, the importance of the customer's experience in the long term and the long-lasting impact that any one experience can have on a consumer. And in this case, we looked at all aspects of customer experience, so the value perception, the product perception, the overall experience, and all of them had a pretty similar picture. I think in this next example that we looked at, while the impact or while the experience can be the same, the kind of the area of headroom is very different. And this was an example of where we looked at matching consumers, a retailer's loyalty program data to our own, to understand how different loyalty tiers, or customers in different loyalty tiers, scored the retailer on different experiences. And in this case, the barrier to loyalty became very obvious. You don't always get such an obvious example, but for this grocery retailer, you can really see that whether you were their top platinum consumers, or whether you were kind of down at I guess, a much more of an opportunity customer in bronze, or whether you didn't even subscribe to their loyalty program, for most areas of the experience, everybody was was rating pretty much the same, be it customer experience, customer service, the overall experience, or even the product quality. What really seemed or sort of stood out as the area where they had the biggest difference and where the barriers to increased loyalty came in was with value perception. And you can see there the big difference of kind of those lower level segments scoring much lower than the others on value perception. And by finding this kind of one area, which is the barrier to loyalty, in this case, the grocer was able to look at their premium sort of private label products and really think about repositioning the messaging around there to be less about product quality, but much more about value perception to try and gain more of that spend. And that's an example of one example, but we see this a lot with retailers. That actually, when you start to look at how loyal customers are versus those that are not loyal, you can quite often see there's a particular aspect of that customer experience that's holding them back. So those two were really about, I guess, what could you do either in your range or what could you do in your service by staff, and how do those things impact on repeat visits and loyalty. Something else that we've looked at, which I think is quite interesting, is about giving customers a reason to return to the store. So if you think about, just in my local area, there are athletic stores that set up weekly running groups, or there are bookstores that have readings by authors, or a lot of convenience stores that maybe have post offices or parcel pickup and parcel drop off in the back of the store. Or in this case, the one we're seeing here, a particular retailer that has co-located with a gaming center. These are all examples of kind of the same thing, of trying to draw more footfall into the store to increase repeat visits, with the idea that the more footfall you have from those customers, the more reasons you give them to return to the store. If you can then convert those trips into additional spend, that gets you the additional visit. And for this gaming, this retailer here, we asked the question about whether the customer was likely to visit the gaming center either later on that day or had already visited it that day, and looked at, for those customers that said yes, how many visits were they making across the quarter versus those customers that had said no. And what you really saw was a massive uptake in visits per quarter from those customers having an additional reason to return to the store. So we looked at this across a 3-month period for a set of pilot stores. And for those stores that had co-location, we saw that about 20% of the customers were coming in and using the gaming center, and those customers were visiting at a much higher frequency. Now, while they were actually taking some of their spend and they were spreading it across visits, over the course of a quarter, they were actually spending a good $10 to $12 more than the other customers. And those additional visits and that additional spend was worth 26,000 kind of additional store visits to the store, and about 330,000 in additional revenue. So it's an example of kind of thinking of other reasons to get consumers to come back, not necessarily expecting a sale every single time, but it can work in your favor in terms of encouraging customers to return. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on loyalty programs, because I think we get a lot of the best way to drive loyalty is through a loyalty program. But I think the danger of that sometimes, and what we see with a lot of loyalty programs, is they're sort of designed with the loyal customer in mind. So for this particular retailer, what we did was look at all the customers that had come in, and we could flag those to see whether or not a loyalty card was presented or not on the transaction, and also look at using the payment card hash, how many previous visits they've made over the last 2 years. And what we saw was that the points where the loyalty card had an impact on their likelihood to return over the next year was really biggest on those customers in their kind of first and second visit. So for a new customer coming in, somebody that hadn't been in the store for at least 2 years, if they presented a loyalty card at that first transaction, they were 30% likely to come back again, whereas if they didn't, it was more like 10%. So a loyalty card had a real impact in kind of visit 2 and visit 3. But by the time you got to visit 4, actually, there was no impact. So the loyalty card at that point, if somebody was coming 4 times, had already come 4 times, then it didn't matter whether they had a loyalty card or not to their likelihood to return. So it really sort of proves the point that, you know, loyalty cards are good at getting, or the value of the loyalty card is if it can get customers to make that second or third visit. Once you've got consumers coming into your store 2, 3, 4 times, actually the loyalty card's not the thing that's going to keep, it's the experience that you've had in store. But I guess what we see a lot is that loyalty cards are designed with the idea that you have to have come in 4 or 5 times to get the benefits. So we've definitely seen loyalty programs built with very high bars to you know, receiving the benefits, where you've almost got to come in 4 or 5 times before it's actually worth it. Or loyalty programs that are only being taken up by people who are already loyal. And I think that's where, you know, you see a danger there, that actually the loyalty card has to give a benefit in that first or second visit for consumers to take it and for it to have an impact on getting to that second visit. And that's the really important thing. And what we also see with this is that the role of staff becomes important in selling the benefits of that loyalty program to that first customer. You can't wait for a customer to come 2 or 3 times before you start introducing the loyalty program to them. It has to come much earlier on. Yeah, that was one on loyalty programs that we had. So, I mean, I guess those are just sort of a quick 3 or 4 examples of how to grow loyalty, or how to grow that additional visit and repeat visits. So I think it's a combination of what's the experience that the consumer has on that first visit, knowing that that has an impact long term. Also giving them a reason to return more often. And then finally on this one, what can you do to encourage that second visit as quickly as possible, because it is often that first and second visit that gets the loyalty for the long term. So Sean, I'm not sure if any questions have come in as we've gone through, but
yeah, I do have a couple here, and I just wanted to make a comment. The one thing I noticed for the first time on that case study is the little byline that you have. 5.1 million customers looked at over 18 months. I mean, that's phenomenal. There's a real depth of data there that you don't often see. So I thought that was pretty interesting to notice.
In the small print.
Yeah, but yes, there are a couple of questions, and one of them actually relates to loyalty. So I thought I would ask that one of you first, since we just got off that topic. We're just getting ready to launch a new loyalty program. Are there any pointers that you can give around what creates the most value?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a reiteration of some of those points. A loyalty program has to be inclusive for all customers. And I think too often we see programs where the benefits kick in once you've already spent $300 or $400, which is, you know, you've already got a loyal customer at that point. It has to have benefits early on. And I think those benefits have to be sustainable in the long term. I don't think you can buy loyalty through, you know, deep discounts on that second visit. It's just not sustainable. So yeah, it has to be sustainable and it has to be inclusive. But I think what we've seen, at least, is that staff have to have a big role in selling the benefits of that. They have to really understand that program, and they have to believe in that program as well. So, you know, we will quite often ask questions about, were you aware of the loyalty program? Staff tell you on the benefits of the loyalty program. Do you agree with, you know, do you value the benefits of the loyalty program? Things like that, to really try and help them understand the full range of customers and what all their customers think of the loyalty program, not just those that have already bought into the program.
Right. So the training, education, internal communication of the nature of the program is quite important.
Yeah, but I think I guess my main points would be it has to be inclusive of all customers, and it has to be sustainable as well.
Great. Okay, thanks for that. Okay, another question. I'm in a high consideration category with a long purchase cycle. Do you think the concepts you've gone through today that seem geared towards fast moving goods can apply to a business like mine?
Yes, I think they can. I think it, you know, obviously it takes longer to work out whether they've worked well. If you have something that's a high consideration product, then obviously it takes a lot longer before you'll know whether or not that customer's loyal or whether they're going to come back. But I'm sure in the past I've read a stat that, you know, people who buy their second BMW are almost definitely going to buy their third. So, you know, I don't think it matters how high that consideration product is. I think a lot of the same things can apply. Getting that second visit can still be incredibly important. And having reasons to, I guess, check in with that customer or have that customer come back. So you see a lot, I think, of these kind of high-end stores having other reasons to come to the store. We work with a high-end footwear retailer in the UK, and they're definitely sort of trying to reposition their brand as not just a place to come buy the shoe. You can go in there and it's kind of a, you know, there's a cafe or there's launches or there's other things to do that keep you engaged with that brand, even if the product's such that you're not likely to buy it that often throughout the year.
Excellent. Okay, thanks for that. Another couple of questions. I heard you mention NPS. Does TruRating measure that?
Yes. So the likelihood to recommend question is there predominantly to effectively give us a version of NPS, because a lot of our retailers focus on NPS. There's NPS, there's customer satisfaction. There's lots of ways of measuring whether or not consumers are buying into the brand. I'm not sure that one's any better than the other at the moment. They all kind of point to the same thing. I think the most important thing is, can you do something and can you action something based on what you find out to make an improvement? Actually, which one you use is kind of less important. But yes, we have an ability to do that because a lot of people are wedded to that and have been using it for a long time.
Excellent, thanks for that. And so far, one last question. I heard you mention working across different countries. How does this concept apply in Europe?
Yeah, so I think predominantly we've worked UK, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, but we have also worked in a couple of countries in Europe. It's very much a payment partner rollout. So if we're enabled with the payment partner, then we work in those. And we do have, we've worked in Portugal, we've worked in Luxembourg, starting to work in or soon to work in many of the other kind of European countries. So it would work in the same way. Obviously, the questions would be in the local language, but yes, it's definitely possible.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. Well, that's the last question I have here. So I think that brings us to the end of the presentation. Thank you, Gareth.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone, and have a great day or evening wherever you may be.